People say quiet individuals are dangerous. Today we are breaking down the psychology of people who do not talk much and why most assumptions about silence are wrong. I have spent years watching people misinterpret quiet behavior. Someone sits silently at a party and others immediately assume they are mysterious or plotting something. But quiet people are not dangerous. They are operating on a completely different wavelength. The first thing to understand is that quiet does not always mean shy. This is where most people get it wrong. Research shows there is a clear difference between choosing silence and being silenced by fear. Some individuals are quiet because they are introverted and prefer less stimulation. Others are shy and want to speak but feel held back by anxiety. These are entirely different psychological states. Society often blends them together and labels both as awkward, but voluntary silence is a very different experience from fearful silence. For many quiet people, silence is intentional. It is not weakness, it is strategy. While others are speaking, they are observing. While others are performing socially, they are analyzing. They notice subtle details. They map out the emotional atmosphere of a room. They pick up on micro-expressions and tone shifts. They sense discomfort before anyone says a word. Research suggests that quiet individuals often score high in observational awareness. They read body language accurately. They detect forced smiles and guarded posture. They notice who is authentic and who is pretending. These details are invisible to those dominating conversations. Information gathered through silence becomes insight, and insight creates influence. Another overlooked trait is cognitive filtering. Quiet individuals tend to think deeply before speaking. Most people process thoughts verbally and spontaneously. Quiet people process internally. They examine what they want to say. They consider possible interpretations. They weigh the value of contributing. By the time they speak, their words have been refined. This internal editing makes their contributions precise. It also explains why they avoid small talk. Conversations about the weather or superficial topics feel draining. They prefer depth over noise. They would rather remain silent than engage in meaningless exchange. However, when the topic shifts to something meaningful, their energy changes. Discuss ideas, creativity, philosophy, or psychology, and they engage fully. It is not inability to speak, it is selective engagement. Another psychological element is energy management. Social interaction requires effort. For many quiet individuals, that effort is significant. Each conversation consumes mental resources. They speak when it adds value. They remain silent when it does not. This selective communication protects their energy. Society often confuses quietness with insecurity. In reality, many quiet individuals are internally confident. They simply do not feel compelled to perform socially. They do not seek validation through volume. They are comfortable existing without constant attention. Silence becomes self-control rather than self-doubt. There is also an interesting pattern regarding trust. Quiet individuals often speak freely around those they trust deeply. Their personality does not suddenly change. It unfolds gradually. Safety unlocks expression. You may know someone for months and believe they are reserved. Then one day in a safe environment, they become animated and expressive. They were never empty. They were cautious. Another fascinating dynamic is that quiet people often attract oversharing. People frequently confide in the quietest person in the room. This happens because quiet presence feels non-judgmental. Listening without interruption creates psychological safety. In a world where everyone competes to speak, genuine listening is rare, and rarity draws people in. Quiet individuals also avoid unnecessary conflict. They see arguments unfolding. They recognize emotional escalation. They choose not to engage. This is not fear of confrontation. It is prioritization of peace. They understand that not every disagreement deserves participation. Their silence becomes a boundary. It protects their mental clarity. There is beauty in this restraint. Still waters often run deep. The quiet person in the corner may have an intricate inner world. They may be building ideas, stories, or strategies silently. Just because thoughts are not broadcast does not mean they are absent. We live in a culture that mistakes volume for value. We assume the loudest voice carries the most insight. Research consistently shows there's no correlation between how much someone speaks and their intelligence. Insight often comes from reflection, not repetition. The quiet mind integrates information before expressing it. This integration produces thoughtful conclusions. When quiet individuals finally speak, It is deliberate. They do not waste words. They speak when something matters, and that is precisely why their words often carry weight. If you are someone who does not talk much, understand that your silence is not a flaw. It may be awareness. It may be discipline. It may be depth. If you know someone who is quiet, do not mistake their silence for disinterest. They may be processing more than you realize. They may understand more than they express. In a noisy world, silence is rare, and rarity has value. If this breakdown resonated with you, subscribe for more psychology that explains real human behavior. Comment below whether you identify as quiet or whether you know someone who does.